Hi guys, I'm Daddy Freeze, convener of the Free the Sheeple movement and leader of the Free Nation in Christ. I greet you and I bring glad tidings. It's indeed a beautiful day, and I have decided to weigh in on what Reverend Funke Adejumo said. She said the contract of life is superior to the contract of marriage, and I agree with her wholeheartedly. And we're here today to scripturally analyze this and see how we can move forward mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and doctrinally as the church seeks to establish the truth about Christ and Christianity and create a system of worship that encompasses the spirit, the truth, and the life of Christ as our way to Yahweh. So let's start with a prayer. Heavenly Father, I come before you to thank you for another beautiful day. I ask for your knowledge and wisdom to be poured upon us. I ask for understanding and I ask for direction. I ask for mercy and love to dwell in our hearts and to dwell amongst us, O Lord. In Yahushua's mighty name I pray. Amen. And all the good people in the house all said a very big amen. Now, with the number of cases that we've seen in recent times where women have been victims, the one that the governor settled in Benue State, and so many others, I think this is the time when we sat down as not just a church, but as human beings to understand what God really wants from us. The first thing she said was that the covenant of life is superior to the covenant of marriage. Absolutely. Because there are people who had life but didn't have marriage, even scripturally. I'll give you the example of Elijah or John the Baptist, or even Christ himself, or Paul. They all had the covenant of life. They were all alive, but they were not married. So the covenant of life is definitely superior to the covenant of marriage. And if you take it beyond the realm of life on earth to everlasting life, because if you read Luke chapter 10, when the Pharisee was testing Yahushua and he was asking him, how do I live? What do I do to live? So he was already alive. So what life was he talking about? Obviously we're talking about the age to come, the hereafter, the eternal life, because the life we have now is a mortal life. So in both instances, both the contract of life eternal and life mortal are more valuable and therefore superior to the contract of marriage. Please go with me to the scriptures very quickly. If you go with me to Matthew chapter 22, and you read from verse 25. Well, suppose there were 7 brothers. The oldest one married and then died without children, so his brother married the widow. And now verse 26. But the second brother also died, and the third brother married her, and this continued till all 7 of them. Last of all, the woman also died. So tell us, whose wife would she be in the resurrection? For all 7 were married to her. Then Yahushua replied, your mistake is that you don't know the scriptures and you don't know the power of God. For when the dead rise, they will neither marry nor be given in marriage. In this respect, they will be like angels in heaven. So, what is Christ trying to say here? Even in the life eternal, life itself is more important than the contract of marriage, because here they had 7 people married to one woman in this life, and they all died, and then the woman too died, and they all went into the hereafter, and then whose wife was she going to be? It didn't matter. The marriage, or the institution of marriage in the eternal life, really doesn't matter. It has no consequence. It's a good thing to be married. It's a beautiful thing. You get to share things with someone special. You get to work together and love and live and procreate and do all these beautiful things. It is awesome. It is somewhat essential, but it is not an absolute necessity. The Pope is not married, and he has achieved more than many people who are married. I'm not saying it's bad to be married, but I want us as human beings to first de-emphasize the achievement status handed over to marriage. Marriage is a good thing, but I personally do not believe it's an achievement. Now, moving a little forward, what does the scriptures say about divorce? Because one thing is, many people do not know how to leave a bad marriage because they were taught that if you leave a bad marriage, you commit adultery. Do the scriptures really support this? So, let's do this. If you go to all the places where Christ talked about marriage, Matthew chapter 19 and verse 1. From verse 1, please join me. Let's do this. I'm reading from the New Living Translation, the NLT. And I'm reading from verse 1. When Yahushua had finished saying these things, he left Galilee and went down to the region of Judea, east of the Jordan River. Large crowds followed him, and he healed the sick. Some Pharisees came and tried to trap him with this question: should a man be allowed to divorce his wife for just any reason? Now let's remember and examine the question. Should a man be allowed to divorce his wife for just any reason? If you were to read verse 3, that is Matthew chapter 19 and verse 3, in the original Greek language that the scriptures were written, it would give us some kind of explicit understanding of what was being said. It says, Existin anthropo appellese te geneca or kata passen iten. Is it lawful for a man to divorce the geneca, the wife, to him for every cause? Passen iten. For just every cause, or just any cause, as the New Living Translation says. So the question isn't really, can a man divorce his wife? That's not the question. The question is, can he divorce her for just any reason? Because in the Old Testament, a man could divorce his wife if he no longer found favor in her. She woke up with a bad hair, or she's added some weight, or she snores too much at night. You know what, I'm done. Hey, take a bill of divorcement. Because Moses clearly gave that concession that, hey, you could give a bill of divorcement. Then, if you read from verse 4, still on Matthew chapter 19, Christ now spoke. He said, haven't you read the scriptures? They record that from the beginning God made them male and female, and he said, "This explains why a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united into one. Since they are no longer two but one, let no one split apart what God has joined together." Then if you read verse 7, it says, "Then why did Moses say in the law that a man could give his wife a written notice of divorce and send her away?" Why? Why was that concession given by Moses? So that's an issue that a lot of scholars have lost the translation off, and they have just said, you know what, it's bad to divorce your wife. You can't divorce, and if you divorce, she can't. Some say both parties can't remarry. Some say the man can remarry, but the woman can't remarry. Now, if you read the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 24 and verse 1, it says, if a man marries a woman, Deuteronomy 24 and verse 1, who becomes displeasing to him, I'm reading from the New International Version, because he finds something indecent about her, he writes her a certificate of divorce and gives it to her and sends her from his house. It was as simple as that. Suppose, let me read it in the New Living Translation. Suppose a man marries a woman, but she does not please him, having discovered something wrong with her. He writes a document of divorce, hands it to her, and sends her away from his house. When she leaves his house, she is free to marry another man. As simple as that. But if the second husband also turns against her, writes a document of divorce, hands it over to her, and sends her away, or if he dies, the first husband may not marry her again, for she has been defiled. That will be detestable to the Lord. You must not bring guilt upon the land the Lord your God is giving you as a special possession. So, according to the old law, which many Muslim scholars follow in this particular regard, if you divorce your wife and send her away, she can remarry. The problem is you can't remarry her after she has remarried. So we need to understand the context of this, and it is so easy for us to throw all this away and say, yeah, you know what, throw the old covenant away, blah, 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 blah. But hey, this is where you get tithe from. There's no tithe in the new covenant as a doctrine. It doesn't exist as a doctrine. So we can't be cherry pickers. We can't come to the old law and pick tithe, because Deuteronomy chapter 14 is where we're instructed on tithing. We can't come to the old covenant and pick tithing that favors us and then drop divorce for just any reason. You know, especially when Christ clarified what Moses said. So if we go back to the book of Matthew chapter 19, and now I'm on verse 8. Or let me read verse 7 again for emphasis so you can understand if you missed it. Then why did Moses say in the law that a man could give his wife a written notice of divorce and send her away? They asked. Yahushua replied, Moses permitted divorce only as a concession to your hard hearts, but it was not what God had originally intended. And I tell you this, whoever divorces his wife and marries someone else commits adultery, unless the wife has been unfaithful. So if you go back to the book of Deuteronomy, the blemish, the fault that a man could find in his wife, so he could give her a written bill of divorcement, Christ explained that fall to be not just her bad hair, or the fact that she has added weight, or because she's no longer beautiful, or because she now has a big tummy. That wasn't the reason. Christ now simplified it and explained that that reason is if she commits porneia. The Greek word that King James erroneously translated into fornication was actually porneia. So Christ said, except for porneia, which is supposedly sexual sin. So except for sexual sins, you cannot divorce your wife. And it gives a very big concession. It says, verse 9 now, Matthew 19:9. And I tell you this, whoever divorces his wife and marries someone else commits adultery, unless his wife has been unfaithful. Now you need to understand that before Christ came, this was not more so about marriage. It was more about women's rights. A lot of you don't understand this and you think, oh, Christ said we can't. No, what Christ was talking about was how women were maltreated. They were given off in divorce for just any reason. She's fat, she's not as beautiful as she used to be. You found somebody nicer and younger and more beautiful, so you want to let her go. Now the poor woman, violence has happened to her. If you read from the book of Malachi says divorce is violent. The woman has experienced violence. She's been torn away from her children. She's been torn away from, for what? What is it that she did? And she has started growing bald. Her hair has started growing gray. And she now has a big tummy. And she's no longer peperimpe. No. So Christ now narrowed down what Moses was saying, that look, the defect, the fault that you can find in a woman that can make you divorce her is that you found her committing a sexual sin. And then divorce is not automatic. Oh, I found my wife committing a sexual sin, I divorce her. It must be that you have thought it through. You've weighed your pros and your cons, and you realize that you cannot live with it. Some men cannot live with a woman who has cheated. It's very hard for some people. It's torture. And some people don't want to put themselves through it. And the Bible or the scriptures have clearly allowed you, New Covenant and Old Covenant, to do away with a woman that has cheated on you and brought you pain. No problem. You're covered. However, we need to now examine what Christ really was trying to do here, which was bring equality as spoken of in the book of Galatians chapter 3 verse 28 to the woman. Now you're no longer Jew or Greek, male or female, slave or free, you're all one in Christ. That oneness could not be attained if one human being could throw away another human being for just any reason. How do you attain oneness? How are you one? How has Christ brought oneness from the old covenant of male superiority? How has Christ brought oneness when really your husband can just do away with you for absolutely no reason? So the reason now has been extended or has been narrowed down to porneia or sexual sins, or some people say sexual immorality. Now let's take this a little further. The church translated this to be a man can divorce his wife, send her away, but she can't remarry. You see, the hypocrisy of religion took, I call it the man-monkey paradox. Some people are trying to create a hybrid between a man and a monkey. The man had a superior brain power while the monkey had superior physical power. So when they tried to create this hybrid between a man and a monkey, half man, half monkey, they thought they'll get the man's brain and the monkey's power, and they'll have this animal that's as powerful as a monkey but as intelligent as a man. What they ended up getting was an animal as powerful as a man and as intelligent as a monkey. So that's what religion did. Religion took away the right of a woman to remarry another man. Clearly, as bad as and as hard as the law of Moses was, the law of Moses allowed the woman to remarry. But Christianity, or Yanity, because there's no Christ in many of these doctrines, took away the right of a woman to remarry, but now gave the right to a man. So a man can remarry in certain contexts. In some contexts, the man and the woman cannot remarry. They must live apart, they must be separated, but they cannot remarry. And I wonder why we are fooling ourselves. Because stories every day. Check the news today. There were stories of there was a story of a pastor whose wife was a gynecologist and was working far away, and his girlfriend was coming to sleep with him on his matrimonial bed. And one day the girlfriend decided to fight him, and she was wearing. The guy said he doesn't know the girl. The girl lifted up her skirt and she was wearing his boxers. Say, is this not your boxers that I'm wearing? How am I wearing your boxers if you don't know me? That's when the whole matter turned into another direction. So what am I trying to say? In essence, it just breeds a lot of hypocrisy. And Christ never said you can't remarry. He never said you. He only gave one excuse, which is immorality. If the woman engages in immorality, then the law of Moses can now take place. Because if you read that scripture very clearly, Christ was explaining the law of Moses. Let's take this again so it will not be like I'm misleading you. Matthew chapter 19 verse 8. Moses permitted divorce only as a concession to your hardened hearts, but it was not what God had originally intended. And I tell you the truth, whoever divorces his wife and marries someone else commits adultery unless the wife has been unfaithful. Now, the question they asked him was, in verse 7, why did Moses say in the law that a man could give his wife a written notice of divorce and send her away? So Christ said, well, that was not what Moses was trying to do. That was not what was intended. Moses gave you. But Christ never said that the woman cannot remarry. Christ only explained why Moses gave that law. And if you read the law of Moses, Moses clearly said a woman can move on. And let me read it to you again so you will not be caught up in ignorance. Go with me to the book of Deuteronomy chapter 24 verse 1. If a man marries a woman but she becomes displeasing to him because he finds some indecency in her. New International Version says because of something indecent about her. New Living Translation says having discovered something wrong with her. And he writes her a certificate of divorce, gives it to her, and sends her from his house. So according to the law of Moses, if he finds something displeasing or she's done something wrong, according to the NIV, he can give her a divorce and send her away from his house. Now, what Christ did was he explained what that something wrong was. And it wasn't just that her hair was turning gray, or that she was adding weight in her sides, or that what used to stand before was... No. It must be that she committed an act of immorality. And if you read verse 2, it says, when she leaves his house, she is free to marry another man. So, the old law permitted the woman to remarry. And so did the new law under Christ. The only thing Christ adjusted in this particular context was the reason. He said, except if she's been unfaithful. So whether once she's been unfaithful and you find that as a blemish in her, you can divorce her. But she can also remarry. I will never take what Paul said over what Christ said. Because Paul tried to explain it in his own concession. Because you see, here's the problem. Moses gave a concession. Christ came back to adjust it. Paul gave a concession. Who is going to come and adjust the concession of Paul? So, we need to look at that very clearly. Now, another thing you need to understand is going back to Galatians chapter 3, verse 28. Male and female are both equal. That was what Christ was trying to do. So just as a man can give his woman a bill of divorce for immorality, so can a woman give a man a bill of divorce for immorality. Now, it took about 2,000 years for the society to adjust from a society where women were not counted. If you read the feeding of the 5,000, it was 5,000 men and women and children. The women and children were not counted among the 5,000 men. If you go from a society where women were not counted to the society we have today, a lot has evolved. But the society we have today was the society that Christ saw when he was bringing equality to both male and female. So yes, a woman too can divorce her husband for immorality. Now, I want to touch on a few things. If you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, let's read one of Paul's concessions to. Instructions on marriage. This is from the Apostle Paul. Now, regarding the question you asked in your letter, yes, it is good to abstain from sexual relations. But because there is so much sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman should have her own husband. The husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs, and the wife should fulfill her husband's needs. The wife gives authority over her body to her husband, and the husband gives authority over his body to the wife. Many marriages do not preach this. Many pastors do not preach this from their pulpits. It is a husband's duty to fulfill a wife's sexual needs. If you can't, go and meet Jaruma and buy chocolate or whatever it is that she's selling that can help you as a man. It is your duty. You will see the part where they say you cannot remarry, but you will not see the part where they say it is your duty. And some guy came to meet me one day and said he likes it in a certain way, but his wife won't do it, blah, 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 blah. I opened the Bible. I said, Auntie, can you see this thing? Will you go home and do what your husband wants? The reason why Paul gave this concession was because there was so much immorality. You are the same person crying that he's carrying babe. You are the same person crying that he doesn't let you look at your phone. But do what you're supposed to do. You don't realize how much of an obligation it is. Some women too, this is to you. You are busy praying and fasting. Half the time you are praying and fasting, your husband has no use for you or no need for you. Do you think I need a woman that can fast for me? Somebody say you need a wife that can. No. I need a wife that will be my friend and companion and make my bed comfortable and happy. I can pray for myself. Me that God gives message. You want to pray for me? What happened to my mouth? What happened to my spirit? How can I be walking with Christ along the path to salvation? I have received the light directly from God and I need a woman in my house to be praying. Where's the sense in that? Where do people get all these things from? I need a woman to do what Paul said she should do to avoid porneia. There was an instruction. Read what came before it and then understand. A husband should fulfill his wife's needs, not buy her bag or car. The needs were specific, sexual needs. Let's read this in the original Greek language. First Corinthians chapter 7. Te gyneki, ho anerton apilon apolodito, homios deke hegeneto andri. Andri from andropo, man, is husband, gyne, or geneki, wife. The word is apodidoto. It doesn't sound very nice, but that is let fulfill. Likewise also the wife to the husband. You must fulfill. Must. Why? Because the world is filled with so much immorality, and any human being can fall for immorality. We're not born without our inner cravings. Even I have them. Every man and every woman listening to me has them. The only difference is I try to cage mine in one small cute cage. Then he goes on again to verse 5. I wonder how many churches miss these teachings. Let's read verse 5. It says, Me aposterite allelos, not deprive one another. Clearly it is saying, do not deprive one another. Verse 5, do not deprive each other of sexual relations unless you both agree to refrain from sexual intimacy for a limited time, so that you can give yourselves more completely to prayer. It doesn't mean if you're having relations you can't pray. It just says if you want to give yourself completely for a limited time. A limited time is not 1 month. Limited. It shows you what it means. 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, depending on how strong you are. Some people cannot do without it for 5 days. If you are one of those, the Bible covers you. Tell your wife, God has answered your prayer. He knows what you want already. Come on, let's do this thing. It says, afterwards you should come together again so that Satan won't be able to tempt you because of your lack of self-control. It means you have the lack of self-control, and Satan can use it. Now, he now says, I say this as a concession, not as a command, but I wish everyone were single just as I am. Yet each person has a special gift from God. of one kind or the other. He wanted everybody to be single because he felt and he believed that he'll be able to achieve more spiritually, being single. Maybe he had it as a gift, he had it as a power. Not everybody has it. And please don't fool yourself and think you have it and then be chasing other people's children up and down and then be harassing them. No, please, it's better you get yourself a wife or a husband. Now, it now says, so I say to those who aren't married and to widows, it is better to stay unmarried just as I am. But if they can't control themselves, yes, they should go ahead and marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with lust. I can't control myself, so I need to be in a healthy relationship with a woman. Maybe you can. Maybe you're a better man than I am, or maybe you're better in that regard. I can't. But guess what? In the marriage that I am, you will know that I will not jump around and misbehave and all those things. Now, if you go to verse 12, it says, now I speak to the rest of you, though I do not have a direct command from the Lord. If a fellow believer has a wife who's not a believer and she's willing to continue living with him, he must not leave her. And if a believing woman has a husband who's not a believer and he's willing to continue living with her, she must not leave him. For the believing wife brings holiness to her marriage, and the believing husband brings holiness to his marriage. Otherwise, your children will not be holy, but now they are holy. But if the husband or wife who isn't a believer insists on going, let them go. In such cases, the believing husband or wife is no longer bound to the other, for God has called you to live in peace. So here is he giving the reason why you can't remarry, according to even Paul, is because you're bound to your old marriage. But here he is saying you're no longer bound together. If you're no longer bound together, what does that mean? It clearly means you can remarry. So, why am I talking about this? I would wish the elders of today's church, because they have more influence than I have. I have a few people who listen to me. They have millions of people who listen to them. I want them to sit down amongst themselves. Reverend Adejumo is younger than them, but still older than I am. If she can carry this petition, and if they can sit down and review the clauses of divorce, it would help us. Many women are stuck in bad marriages because they believe that it is a sin to remarry. So you are stuck in a marriage and cheating. You are stuck in a marriage and there's violence. And you're stuck in a marriage and you're unhappy because you're afraid that if you leave, you can't remarry. First of all, you've been given you've been given clearance by Christ and even Moses. Both laws said, look, you can remarry the moment you've been given a bill of divorce. And what can give you the bill of divorce? Christ clearly explained it. Infidelity. So you've caught your husband once, you've caught him twice. You don't want to deal with it. You are not a sinner if you divorce and remarry. This needs to be explained to women, because if they understand this, they will no longer be under such compulsion to stay in places that are destroying them. So here's my message to you all. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I plead with you. Try to see reason with where I'm coming from. Try to understand that we need to be more spiritual than religious. There are many people I know who are married, who cheat, who do all sorts of things, both sides, male and female. But they come with the hypocrisy of, I'm in a marriage. I think that's more dangerous. I think you're better off divorced. Someone said, yeah, if you divorce a woman and you remarry her, like Christ said, you're going to be committing adultery. The same Christ also said in Matthew chapter 5 that when you look at a woman lustfully, you have committed adultery already. So you don't need to divorce a woman and remarry before you commit adultery. The one you are doing on Instagram every day, following all those fine girls that will shake this side and shake the other side and then look really good. You've already committed the adultery in your heart without ever having said a word to the woman. Go and read Matthew chapter 5. Christ explained this clearly. So, isn't it hypocritical for me to not go and remarry because of the fear of adultery? Meanwhile, I live deeply in adultery every single day inside the marriage. Apart from the ones that I look at on social media, I have the ones that come and visit me and I give them 10K and they do all sorts of things to me that we both enjoy. Think about it. You see, Christ hates sin, and so does God, but they both hate hypocrisy more. That is why in Matthew chapter 23, Christ went in hard on the scribes and Pharisees. He called them hypocrites because the hypocrisy was worse than the sin. So please, this is what I'm saying. If you're in a bad place, you know you can't take it, but the only thing that is binding you to your marriage is the fact that you're afraid you're going to go to hellfire. It's a lie. You're not going to go to hellfire if you divorce, especially if you have the reason that Christ clearly gave you: infidelity. So God bless you guys. Stay away from sin, and please, I beg you also, stay away from hypocrisy. Take care, and God bless you all.